Alright guys, we are going to do the procedure for the forming and naming ionic compounds lab. It looks like that. Please excuse all of my writing all over the paper that I have there. By now you should have written the procedure and answered the pre-lab questions, as well as making yourself a reaction grid for that. A reaction grid is just something that looks very similar to a times table, where you have all the reactants, or as they're called on the paper, the reagent solutions, listed across the top and then down the side on the left. Now, please be aware when you form your paper in this way that you're going to have doubles of all of the mixtures. So you'll only wind up doing about half of the table. So if you draw a diagonal line through all the boxes where the substance is mixed with itself, you will then only have to fill out either the boxes on the top of that line or underneath that line for all of the reactions. When I do this today, I'm going to start with one solution and add all the other solutions to it, and we'll look at the reactions, and then we'll go to the next one, and so on and so forth until we do them all. So the very first solution that I'm going to be using today is sodium phosphate, and sodium phosphate has the formula Na3PO4. So I'm going to mix sodium phosphate with the other 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 substances. So I'm going to put 4 drops of sodium phosphate in each one of these wells. Okay, so as you can see when I put that in there, sodium phosphate is a clear and colorless liquid. Alright, so in this top one right here by my finger, I'm going to add in potassium hydroxide. Potassium hydroxide has the formula KOH. Okay, so looking there, it's very, very hard for you to see probably in the video. Let me see if I can move it a little closer. There was a white solid that was formed in there, so that is the sign of a chemical reaction. Let me reset you here. There you go. Alright, so in the next one, I'm going to add sodium oxalate. Oh, let me see here. Sorry, they fell over a little bit and got mixed up. So sodium oxalate has the formula Na2C2O4. And I'm going to, it again is also a clear colorless liquid. So I'm going to add it to this well right here, and we're going to look for some sort of change. And in that one, there is no change. So since there is no change, that means there is no reaction. So beside that, we're going to use cobalt chloride, which is COCl2. It's going to go into this well right here. Now, please be aware that COCl2 does have this pretty pink color. So we are going to see a pinkish color here. That is not necessarily a sign of a reaction if it gets lighter, only if it gets darker or there is some sort of solid formed or it changes a different color besides pink. And all it did was dilute that color a little bit, so no reaction there. So next up, I'm going to use strontium chloride, and strontium chloride has the formula SrCl2. And again, it is also a clear and colorless liquid, so we're going to look for some sort of change in this well right here. And no change, so no reaction. Okay, so next up, oh, let me flip my paper over here. We're going to use potassium ferrocyanide. So potassium ferrocyanide has the formula K4FeCN6. So ferrocyanide is a polyatomic ion that was not on our list of polyatomic ions, but the formula for it is simply the FeCN6, and it has a -4 charge as an ion. So I'm going to put about 4 drops of potassium ferrocyanide into this well here. And nothing going on there but a little bit of diluted color. So no reaction. So next up we have sodium carbonate. And sodium carbonate has the formula Na2CO3. Again, it is a clear colorless liquid. So we are looking for some sort of change in color there. And it'll be going into this well right here. And nothing happened, so no change. So next up, we are going to be using silver nitrate. Silver nitrate has the formula AgNO3. And it'll be going into this well here. So you can see a very visible change there. We went from clear and colorless to bright yellow, so that is most definitely a chemical change. Next up we have copper sulfate. Copper sulfate has this pretty teal color, and we're going to add it into this well here. So nothing happened there, but a little bit of dilution of color. It did not get any darker, so that's how we know there was not a chemical change. So next up we have nickel chloride. So nickel chloride has this kind of cool greenish color, and it has the formula NiCl2. I'm going to put 4 drops in this well right here. And nothing there but a dilution of color, so no chemical change. Alright, so next up we're going to use potassium iodide. So potassium iodide has a very pale yellow color to it, but again it is still clear. So that means that we can see right through it, light passes all the way through. I'm going to add 4 drops to this well right here. And nothing happened there, so no chemical reaction. And then after that we're going to add in lead nitrate. Lead nitrate has the formula PbNO32. Again, it is clear and colorless, and it will be added to this well right here. So again, this one is probably very hard for you to see. I'll move the camera. There was a white solid that formed in that one. So when we added the lead nitrate to the sodium phosphate, there was a reaction. Okay, so there, come back into focus. And then finally, to this one right here, we're going to add iron 3 nitrate. So iron 3 nitrate has this gold color, and it has the formula FeNO33. Oh, you can't see it if I add it that way, sorry. And nothing there but I do a dilution of color, so no chemical reaction. Okay, so that is sodium phosphate with all of the other substances. So let me switch my trays out. And now we're going to be adding all the substances to potassium hydroxide. So I'm going to put potassium hydroxide in, let's see here, 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 of the wells. Okay, so there is potassium hydroxide in 11 of them, and now we're going to go through and we're going to add everything to them again. So I'm going to start with sodium oxalate, and sodium oxalate will be added to this well. And no solid form, so no chemical reaction. So next up we are going to add cobalt chloride, which is right here. There was a chemical change, color change, so that means there was a chemical change there. Next up we're going to add strontium chloride, so that'll be going into this well. And no solid formed, so no chemical reaction. Next up we're adding potassium ferrocyanide, which will be going into this last top well. And no change there. Starting in the second row here, I'm going to add sodium carbonate. And in that one there was a change. There was a white solid that formed. So chemical reaction happened there. Sorry, I know it's hard to see those white solids that form when you're not here in person. Okay, so next up I'm going to add silver nitrate. So silver nitrate goes into this well. And most definitely a color change there. Okay, so next up we're going to add copper sulfate. It'll be going into this well. Alright, so this is one of those times where it's kind of hard to tell the chemical reaction has happened because the solid that forms is very similar to the liquid, but it is most definitely a solid that formed in there. You can tell by the way it is distributed within the well. So that is most definitely a chemical reaction. And then finally in this row we are going to add nickel chloride, and it's going to go into this well right here. And again, this is another one where it's kind of hard to see because the solid that forms is very similar in color. But again, when you look at that distribution of the solid, you can tell that it is forming because you can still see that there is a clear portion up here as well as down here. So that tells you that there was a chemical reaction. Alright, down to our last three substances here that'll go in the bottom row. The first one that we're going to add is potassium iodide into this well. And no change there. Then we're going to add in lead 2 nitrate, excuse me. It's going into this well right here. I don't know if you can see that, but a very bright white solid formed. See how it's brighter white in this well than this one, so that's how you know that a solid has formed in there. That is a white solid. And then finally, we are going to add iron 3 nitrate in this well. There is most definitely a color change there, so that is an indication of a chemical reaction. Alright, so let's get rid of this tray. And here's our next tray. And this time we're going to start with sodium oxalate. So I'm going to start by putting sodium oxalate in 10 of the wells. Okay, so there is sodium oxalate in 10 of the wells. Now we're going to go through and we're going to start adding our other substances. The first substance that we add in is cobalt chloride. It will go into this well. Alright, so again, this is one of those substances where it's kind of hard to see, but it did make a solid very similar in color to the original liquid. So that was a sign of a chemical reaction. And next up is strontium chloride, which will be going into the second well right here. And again, very bright white solid being formed in there. So most definitely a sign of a chemical reaction. You see how bright that is in there? Okay, so next up we're going to add potassium ferrocyanide to the third well in the top row. And no change. And then finally to that top row, let me readjust the camera there a little. Finally to that top row we are going to add sodium carbonate to this well. And no change happened there. Alright, so moving down to the second row now, we're going to add silver nitrate. And again, a very bright white solid formed. I will move the camera here so you can see that a little better. So you can see how this well and this well are brighter white than those others. So that helps us know that there was a white solid that formed in those wells. So next up I'm going to add copper sulfate to this well. And there is a blue solid that is formed. It is slightly different colored than the liquid, so that is how we know that that is something new. Next up we add nickel 2 chloride to this well right here. And again, a little bit different color solid, so a chemical reaction. And then finally in this row I'm going to add potassium iodide. And nothing, no change, so no chemical reaction. Alright, so moving down to our bottom row here, the first thing I'm going to add is lead 2 nitrate to this well. And again, a very bright white solid formed. If you look, you can see it there in the well. Alright, and then finally we get iron 3 nitrate into this well right here. And I'm putting it over there in the well beside it so you can see that there was a chemical reaction, because it's kind of hard to tell on that one. If you look, This was the color of the iron nitrate all by itself, and here it got more yellow. It lost its gold color. That is not a simple dilution. That is a color change, so you have evidence of a chemical reaction. Alright, so let's get rid of that tray. Now, we are going to start by adding cobalt chloride to, oops, let me move that tray a little bit, sorry. Cobalt chloride to 9 of the wells. Oops, got a little overzealous there. Alright, so we're going to start by adding strontium chloride to the first well. And nothing but a simple dilution there in color, so no chemical reaction. Next up, I'm going to add potassium ferrocyanide to the second well. And a color change, so we know what that means. Okay, next up we're going to add sodium carbonate to the third well in the top row. And there, that turned more of a purple color, so that is most definitely a chemical change. Alright, so next up we're going to add silver nitrate to the last one, and nothing but a dilution of color. Alright, so starting on the next row, we're going to add copper sulfate first. And that one is kind of weird because it looks like there might be a chemical reaction, but you have to remember we are adding this blue colored liquid to the pink liquid, so that is not a chemical reaction. Alright, next up we're going to add nickel to chloride to this well right here. And again, something that may look like a chemical reaction, but you have to remember nickel 2 chloride is this pale green color, so that's just a mixing of the two colors, not a chemical reaction. So next up we add potassium iodide. And nothing there, no change. So next up we add lead 2 nitrate to the last well in that second row. And you can see there where we have a nice bright white solid forming. Okay, we see a lightening of that color, and if we move in, you can most definitely see the signs of the white solid around the edges where it looks much brighter white than in the middle. And then, oops, sorry. And then finally to our last one, we are going to add iron 3 nitrate to this well right here. Okay, again, something that might look like a chemical reaction, but remember iron 3 nitrate is this gold color, so that is simply a mixing of the colors of the solution, not the sign of a chemical reaction, so no reaction there. So let's switch out again. Alright, so this time we're going to start with strontium chloride, and I'm going to add it to 8 of the wells. Okay, so there's strontium chloride in all my wells. Okay, so I'm going to start by adding potassium ferrocyanide here in the top. And no change there. Next I'm going to add sodium carbonate to this second well. Okay, and that one's, again, very hard to see. There was a white solid that formed in there. So you're looking at this well right here, a white solid that formed. Alright, so next up we're going to add silver nitrate to the third well in the top. Okay, again, a very bright white solid. I think you can see that one on the camera. Next up we're going to add copper sulfate. And nothing there but a simple dilution of color. Next up we're going to add nickel 2 chloride. And that one also is a simple dilution of color. Next up we have potassium iodide. Nothing there, no sign of a chemical reaction. Lead 2 nitrate. A nice bright white solid again formed. So we're looking at this one right here, a nice bright white solid. I just noticed that there's something in here, so I'm not going to use that well. I'm actually going to pull a tray that we used previously that has a clean well in it, because I'm going to have to use that one again here in a little bit. So let's use this one. And in this one I am going to put some strontium chloride right here. So we're still starting with that same liquid there. And this time I'm going to add some iron 3 nitrate to it, sorry. And nothing happening there but a dilution of color. Okay, so next new tray. Alright, so this time I'm going to start with potassium ferrocyanide. I'm going to add it to 7 wells. Okay, so there are 7 wells with potassium ferrocyanide in them. And so I'm going to start adding my solutions, and I'm going to start up here by adding sodium carbonate. So nothing happening there but a little bit of dilution of color, so no change. So next up I'm going to add silver nitrate. Okay, in this one we see a white solid forming. And this one right here, so that we know what that means. Next up I'm going to add copper sulfate. And a big color change there, so what does that mean? And then finally down here I'm going to add nickel 2 chloride. Now, that one, there is a solid in there, so you know what that means. Let me adjust my tray a little bit. Okay, so next I'm going to add potassium iodide, and I'm going to add it to this well right here. And no change. Then to this well right here I'm going to add lead 2 nitrate. A nice bright white solid forms there. And then finally down here I'm going to add iron 3 nitrate. And a very big color change. Alright, so let's get another tray. I'm going to have to rinse this one really quick. I didn't realize there was that much residue in it. Alright, so there's our tray for this one. And this time we're going to start by adding sodium carbonate to 6 wells. Okay, so there are 6 wells. And the first thing I'm going to add to this one is silver nitrate. So, I don't know if you can see that one very well, but a nice bright white solid. Oops, let me move that cord. A nice bright white solid form there. Okay, so next up I'm going to add copper sulfate to this well right here. And there is a blue solid that forms in that one. Again, we can tell because if you look especially at the edges, like up here and down here, you can see where that blue color is not the same, which tells us that the solid is not evenly distributed throughout the well. Now to the top I'm going to add nickel 2 chloride. And nothing there but a dilution of color. Now to the last well up here I'm going to add potassium iodide. And no change. Well, wait. Yep, there was a change there. It's a very off-white solid that formed in there, so that is the sign of a chemical reaction. Okay, so now we're down to the second row. Let me move that a little. So I'm going to add lead 2 nitrate. And again, that forms a nice bright white solid. And then finally to this well right here, I'm going to add iron 3 nitrate. Oops. And you get a orange solid that forms there, so most definitely a sign of a chemical reaction. Now we're going to finish using this tray, but this time we are going to put silver nitrate in 5 of the wells. So I'm going to put it across the bottom in these 3 and here, because this one is stained, I think, but I'm not 100% sure. Could be some residue, so I'm going to put it in here. Okay, then put that away. Alright, so next up I have copper sulfate. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to add copper sulfate to the silver nitrate in this well right here. And nothing going on there but a dilution of color. Alright, so to this well that has silver nitrate in it, I'm going to add nickel 2 chloride. And you have a white solid that is forming in that is tinged green. Okay, so to this well here that has sodium nitrate in it, I am going to add potassium iodide. You get a yellowish color solid being formed there that I'm pretty sure you can see in the camera. Okay, so next up you have lead 2 nitrate. No change. And then finally I'm going to add iron 3 nitrate to this last well. And nothing but a dilution of color. Alright, so we're done with that tray. Okay, so we're going to reuse a tray again. This time we are only paying attention to the bottom row. And the substance that we are going to start with is copper sulfate. So I'm going to put copper sulfate in 4 of them. Remember, it has that nice pretty blue color all by itself. Okay, so now to the copper sulfate, and I'm going to add nickel chloride in this first row, in the first well. And nothing going on there but a color dilution, because we added that green color to the blue, so it just made it a bluey green. Alright, so next up I'm going to add in potassium iodide. And most definitely a color change. Then I'm going to add lead 2 nitrate to this well. And you have a nice white solid that forms in there. So that one's probably a little hard to see on the camera. So when I go this way, let me see if I can drop it in there while you're looking. You can see some of that white forming as the swirls go around. Alright, so to the last well here, I'm going to add iron 3 nitrate. Nothing going on there but a color dilution. So we're done with that one. So we'll put that tray to the side. And again, we're going to reuse a tray. So here I have nickel 2 chloride. So I'm going to put nickel 2 chloride in 3 of the wells. 1, 2, and 3. Alright, and to the first well here, I'm going to add potassium iodide. And nothing but a color dilution. So no change. To the next one right here, I'm going to add lead 2 nitrate. And again, nothing going on but a color dilution. And then finally to this one right here, whoa. Sorry, I did not focus that very well. So finally to this one right here, iron 3 nitrate. And again, nothing but a color dilution. Alright, so we're done with nickel 2 chloride. Next up, we are going to start with potassium iodide, and I'm going to put it in this well and this well right here. Okay. So now to the potassium iodide, I am going to add lead 2 nitrate in this well. Very vibrant color change, so you know what that means. And then to this well right here, I'm going to add the iron 3 nitrate. Again, very vibrant color change, so you know what that means. So now I'm going to put this tray back. We are going to reuse this tray right here, but we are only going to focus on this well right here. In this well, I'm going to add lead 2 nitrate, so a clear, colorless liquid. I'll put that one away. And to it, I'm going to add the iron 3 nitrate. So nothing there but a color dilution. Alright, so that is mixing all of the reagent solutions that we had to. Hopefully you were recording all of that information into your reaction grid as we were going. If not, you're going to have to go back and watch it again and record all that information. And then when you are done with that, you are going to have to answer the analysis and conclusion questions, numbers 1 and 2. For number 1, you are writing 2 chemical formulas for what is now in these trays if there was a chemical reaction there. And then for number 2, you're going to write the names for those chemical compounds. Now, remember, you only have to do this for the reagent mixtures that showed a chemical reaction. If there was no chemical reaction, then you don't have to write the names and the formulas for them. That's all I have for you on this lab. If you have any questions, please email me or call me here at school, after school, or during my plan, which is from 9 to 10:30. Until then, have a great day, and I'll see you later.